My son stood in front of me, smiling, holding a small box. Everyone at the party leaned forward, clapping, waiting for me to open it. I thought it would be jewelry, maybe a framed photo of us together. My heart pounded with hope. But when I lifted the lid, my world shattered. A one-way bus ticket to a retirement home. The crowd fell silent. My son whispered coldly, "It's time, Mother." But what I discovered next changed everything. I grew up believing family was forever, that no matter how harsh life became, the bonds between mother and child could never break. I learned it young after my husband died. I was left alone with a boy barely out of diapers and a heart that felt like glass. Florida was hot, sticky, unforgiving, but I worked. Nights, mornings, double shifts. I scrubbed motel floors until my hands cracked. I took in laundry from neighbors. I cooked, cleaned, stitched. Anything to keep food on the table and hope in my son's eyes. I told myself every ache was worth it. Every tear, every lonely night in that tiny house by the highway was nothing compared to the pride I felt watching him grow. He was bright, handsome, clever. I gave him everything. Shoes when mine had holes. Hot meals when I went hungry. I whispered promises into the dark. You will have the life I never had. And for a long time, I believed he was grateful. On his birthdays, he hugged me tight, told me I was the best mother in the world. At his high school graduation, he looked into the crowd, found me, and raised his cap like I was the reason he made it. I thought, yes, it was all worth it. But life has a cruel way of twisting love into something unrecognizable. It began small, like cracks in a wall you don't notice until the whole thing collapses. He went to college on a scholarship. I thought he would come back often, but the visits grew fewer, the calls shorter. When he met her, his future wife, it was as if my son disappeared into someone else's shadow. She was beautiful, polished and sharp-tongued. From the first handshake, I felt the sting. Her smile never reached her eyes. She called me ma'am instead of mom, always keeping me at a distance. I told myself it was nerves, adjustment, but when they married, the distance became a canyon. I still tried. I baked the cake at their wedding even though she insisted on catering. I gave them the necklace my husband had gifted me on our wedding night, believing it would become a symbol of family continuity. She smiled, said thank you, then slipped it into her purse without even looking at it. My son didn't notice. Or maybe he chose not to. Years passed. They had children, sweet little faces that lit up my world. At first, I was the doting grandmother, rocking them to sleep, teaching them nursery rhymes. But slowly, I was pushed aside. They don't need sugar, Mom. Don't spoil them with stories, Mother. You don't understand how kids are raised today. Every word chipped at me. Still, I stayed. I told myself I could endure it. For him, for the children. The house we lived in, the very walls built with my late husband's sweat and my sacrifices, became theirs in practice, if not in truth. They treated it as though I were a guest. I had the smallest room, tucked away in the corner, far from the laughter of the children. Sometimes I'd hear them giggling at night, and I'd press my ear to the wall, aching to be part of their world. The worst moments were when neighbors visited. She'd talk over me, correct me, laugh at my stories as if I were a foolish old woman. My son never stopped her. Sometimes he joined in, and yet I held on. I thought, maybe one day they'll see. Maybe one day they'll understand everything I gave. That hope carried me until my 70th birthday. I woke up that morning with trembling excitement. I practiced a little speech in the mirror, words of gratitude, of love, of pride. My dress was old but pressed, my hair brushed back the way my husband used to like. I imagined them surrounding me with candles, with laughter, with love. The house was decorated, balloons, streamers, the smell of cake drifting from the kitchen. Friends and neighbors gathered, children running about, music filling the air. For a moment I felt part of something again. When my son stood before me, holding that small box, my heart swelled. I thought, this is it. He remembers. He cares. But inside was not jewelry, not a letter, not a token of love. It was a bus ticket, a one-way trip to a retirement facility. I froze. My hands trembled. I heard whispers ripple through the room. Some laughed nervously, thinking it was a joke, but his eyes told me it wasn't. Cold, unblinking, distant. He leaned close so only I could hear. "It's time, Mother. You'll be better off there. We'll visit sometimes." My chest burned, my throat closed. I forced a smile, though tears blurred my vision. The room clapped politely, awkwardly. My daughter-in-law smirked, satisfied. That night, I sat alone in my corner room, clutching the bus ticket, staring at the shadows on the wall. I whispered to the photograph of my husband, "Do you see what they've done to me? Do you see how they've turned your home into my prison?" I thought that was the end of my story, that I would quietly fade away, discarded like yesterday's trash. But fate had other plans, because tucked inside an old box of papers, buried deep in the back of my closet, I found something they never expected. Something that made my heart pound with a new fire. But what I discovered next changed everything. After the party, things only got worse. The bus ticket wasn't a cruel joke. It was a plan. My son and his wife began pushing me day after day to pack my things. "Mother, you'll love it there," he said with a smile that didn't touch his eyes. "They'll cook for you, clean for you. It'll be easier on all of us." Easier on all of us. The words cut deeper than any knife, as if my existence had become a burden to the very boy I had carried, fed, clothed, and raised. His wife added her poison with a smirk. "You'll make new friends, play cards, bingo. Isn't that what old ladies enjoy?" I bit my tongue until I tasted blood. I wanted to scream. I am not some broken toy to be shelved away. But the words caught in my throat. Instead, I nodded, pretending to consider it. Inside, I crumbled. The days that followed were filled with humiliation. I overheard her on the phone, laughing with her friends. "We finally convinced the old hag. Just a little longer and she'll be gone. The house will feel so much bigger without her clutter." Her words spread like poison ivy, choking the air. My room shrank into a cage. The children stopped visiting me as often. When I called for them, she'd pull them away. "Don't bother Grandma, she's resting." Soon they stopped knocking on my door at all. Even my things began to disappear. The necklace my husband had given me, the one I had entrusted to her on her wedding day, was gone. When I asked, she feigned innocence. "Oh, I thought you gave it to me. It's mine now." I found drawers rummaged through, heirlooms missing. Silver spoons my husband had collected, gone. My son shrugged when I confronted him. "Mother, you don't use those things. Stop being so dramatic." One evening, I heard raised voices in the kitchen. I crept closer, my heart pounding. "She's still here," my daughter-in-law snapped. "I'm tired of living with her breathing down my neck. She's taking up space. She's suffocating us." My son's voice followed, lower but harsher. "I know, but once she's moved, the house will be ours. She can't hold on forever." Ours. The word echoed through me like thunder. The house wasn't theirs, it was mine. Bought with my husband's sweat and my sacrifices. Every nail, every wall, every brick had been earned with our pain. And yet, they spoke as if I were the intruder. Still, I stayed silent, hoping, wishing my son would wake up and see what was happening. But he only sank deeper into her web. On Sunday mornings, when I cooked pancakes for the children, she'd wrinkle her nose. "We don't eat that junk." "Mother, stop pushing your outdated food." The kids stopped asking for my recipes, stopped sitting at my table. One afternoon, I tried telling my son how lonely I felt. I told him I missed our talks, our walks, the simple evenings we used to share. He didn't look up from his phone. "Mother, things change. Stop clinging to the past. We have our own lives now." Clinging to the past, as if my entire existence, my love, my sacrifices, was nothing more than an inconvenience, but the cruelty didn't end there. One evening, a neighbor stopped me on the street. She looked at me with pity in her eyes. "Are you feeling better?" she asked softly. "Better?" I frowned. "Yes, dear. Your daughter-in-law told us you've been confused lately, forgetful. She said you sometimes wander around at night, not remembering where you are." I felt my stomach drop. They were poisoning my reputation, telling the neighborhood I was losing my mind, making me look like a senile fool. That night, I confronted them. Why are you telling people I'm sick? Why are you spreading lies? My voice trembled, but it was strong enough. My daughter-in-law crossed her arms. Because it's true. You forget things, you lose things. Don't you remember? I turned to my son. His eyes were cold. We're worried about you, Mother. Maybe you don't notice it, but you're slipping. My knees nearly gave out. I wanted to scream. I am not slipping. I remember everything. But the more I protested, the more insane I looked. They were building a case. Slowly, carefully, they were painting me as unstable. Every day became a battlefield. The house, once my sanctuary, now felt like enemy territory. My laughter was silenced. My stories mocked. My presence resented. Then came the night that broke me. It was storming outside. Rain pounded against the roof. I was sitting alone in my room when my daughter-in-law barged in. Mother, the guest room is needed. You'll sleep in the garage from now on. The garage? My voice cracked. Yes, it's only temporary. We need space. Don't make this harder than it has to be. When I looked to my son, hoping for rescue, he avoided my eyes. He didn't defend me. He didn't stop her. So I moved into a cold, damp garage filled with boxes and dust. A single light bulb hung from the ceiling. Water dripped from cracks above. My bed was an old cot with thin sheets. That night, shivering under a blanket, I held the photo of my husband to my chest. Tears slid down my cheeks. Do you see me? I whispered to the darkness. Do you see what our son has become? For the first time in my life, I felt truly abandoned, unwanted, cast aside by the very person I had given everything to. I thought it couldn't get any worse, that this was the lowest point a mother could sink to. But I was wrong, because buried deep in the boxes stacked in that garage, I found something. Something they had overlooked: old documents, legal papers, proof of ownership. The house was mine. Every wall, every inch, not theirs, not his, mine. And as I traced my fingers over the papers, through my tears, something inside me shifted. The sorrow twisted into something else. Rage. They wanted me gone. They wanted to erase me, but they had no idea who they were dealing with. I sat there on that cot, clutching the papers, my hands trembling. My husband's handwriting was still scrawled across the margins. His name, my name, the proof that this house, this life, had been ours. Not my son's, not hers. The rain outside beat against the roof, steady and merciless, like a drum calling me back to myself. For the first time in years, I didn't feel helpless. I felt awake. They thought I was weak, old, finished. But now I saw the truth. I wasn't their guest. I wasn't their burden. I was the owner, and they were the intruders. The next morning, I hid the papers carefully, tucking them into a folder under my mattress in the garage. I smiled when my daughter-in-law shoved a bowl of oatmeal at me and muttered, "Eat before you forget." She thought she had broken me, but inside I was laughing. I began to play their game. I pretended to be confused, frail, harmless. I let her believe I was losing my mind. If she asked me a question, I'd frown and say, "Oh dear, I can't quite recall." If my son told me to move something, I'd shuffle slowly, apologizing for being a burden. They pitied me, they underestimated me, and that was exactly what I wanted. At night, when the house was quiet, I spread the papers across the cot and studied them. Every clause, every line. I could hear my husband's voice in my ear. "Stand tall, Margaret. Don't let them take what's yours." I began making quiet trips into town. I told them I was walking to church, but instead I visited a lawyer, a kind man with sharp eyes who listened to my story without judgment. When I laid the documents on his desk, he nodded. "Legally, this house is still yours," he said. "You have every right to evict them if you wish." My heart thudded. Evict them. Throw them out of the home they had turned into my prison. But I didn't rush. No, rushing would rob me of the satisfaction. I wanted them to feel what I had felt. Small, powerless, humiliated. So I gathered evidence. Every cruel word, every insult, every theft. I photographed the garage where I slept. I I wrote down dates, times, conversations. I even recorded their voices, tiny snippets from my phone when they thought I wasn't listening. One night, I caught my son in the kitchen counting money. My necklace glittered in his hand. He slid it into an envelope and muttered, "This should cover part of the debt." My stomach twisted, but I didn't make a sound. I simply pressed record. The children became my secret comfort. Sometimes they snuck into the garage when their parents weren't watching. My granddaughter whispered, "Grandma, why does Mommy say you're sick? You don't look sick." I hugged her tight, kissed her hair, and promised, "One day you'll understand, and when that day comes, I'll be right here." Each day, the rage in me grew hotter, but so did the clarity. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about justice. I was no longer a victim. I was a storm waiting to break. The night before their big dinner party, a gathering of friends, neighbors, and business contacts, I lay awake staring at the ceiling of the garage. My son's voice echoed in my head. "It's time, Mother. You'll be better off gone." Gone. Forgotten. Replaced. No. I turned my face toward the folder under my pillow, the papers that held my power, my husband's legacy. Tomorrow I would remind them who I was. Tomorrow I would take back everything, and they would never see it coming. I didn't wait for a storm to strike, I made one. They were proud that night. The house glittered with chandeliers and laughter. Her friends arrived in silk dresses. Men in crisp shirts clinked glasses. My son stood at the center telling the same stories he used to tell me. Only now he said them with an arrogance that made my skin crawl. They all saw him as the successful man he pretended to be. They didn't see the cracks beneath his polished smile. I walked in like I belonged there. I wore the dress I'd kept for years, worn at the edges but clean and proud. Feelings swirled in my chest. Fear, rage, a strange calm. I clutched the folder under my arm. My husband's handwriting peeked from the edges. That paper was heavier than any stone. My son raised his glass for a toast. "To family," he said. Everyone echoed. The room buzzed. I smiled. Inside, my palms were sweating. I waited until the music softened and the chatter slowed. Then I stood, slowly, deliberately. The room turned toward me like someone pulling a curtain. Silence fell. Even their laughter died. "My friends," I began. My voice was quieter than I felt, but it carried. "Thank you for coming. This house has seen a lifetime of memories. It was built by my husband and me." I felt eyes on my back. I saw her mouth curl into a tight smile. I opened the folder. I put the papers on the dining table like a judge laying down a verdict. "This house belongs to me," I said. "These are the deeds." A ripple went through the guests. Confused faces. A few polite coughs. He laughed nervously. "Margaret, come on, you don't need to—" I waited. I gave them a moment to settle in. Then I pushed play on my phone. The recording filled the room, his voice, her voice. Cold words about getting rid of the problem. Laughs about the necklace, plans about selling the silver. The way they spoke about me like a broken appliance. The room shifted. Conversations stuttered. Forks clinked harder. My son's face drained of color. She froze, the color gone from her cheeks. "You stole my things," I said softly. "You lied to friends. You told them I was unwell to cover your cruelty." I reached into the folder again and pulled out photographs I'd taken. Drawers emptied, boxes of my jewelry gone, the garage where I had slept. I laid them down, one by one, like cards in a hand. Neighbors leaned forward, a gasp. Mrs. Hampton, who'd been at our block parties for years, put a hand over her mouth. "Oh my," she whispered. I'd done more than gather proof. I'd tied threads together. The lawyer who'd listened to my story sat at the end of the table. He stood when he saw me. He produced a stamped envelope, an official notice of eviction and a claim for the stolen items. He'd filed it that morning. He'd also called the local police to confirm receipt. Everything was by the book. Everything was clean. Everything was final. "You hear that?" my son stammered. This is ridiculous." He tried to smile. No one laughed. His friends shifted uncomfortably. Eyes slid away from him like fish. She tried to bluff. Margaret, you don't have to make a scene. She spoke to me like she had for months, condescending. That night, no one followed her lead. The smugness left her face, replaced by panic. The police arrived, quiet, professional men, not to take me away, to serve him. Papers were handed across the table. I watched as the weight of the room shifted. People who had once greeted them with envy now looked at them with distance. Their acquaintances exchanged sympathetic glances for me instead. And then came the worst blow. I held up my grandson's drawing, a crayon house with smiling faces. I asked the children to come forward. The little ones climbed onto chairs, small faces turning up to me. My granddaughter's hand trembled when she spoke. "Grandma," she said, voice small but steady. "Sometimes Mommy yells a lot. She says mean things." Silence swallowed the room. The adults looked at each other, uneasy. The daughter-in-law's mask cracked and fell. She fled to a corner, tears spilling down her face like rain. Not the calculated, composed woman she showed the world. A frightened woman, exposed. Word travels in neighborhoods like wildfire. By dawn, whispers had taken residence in every front yard. The family's reputation, so carefully curated, began to fray at the edges. Business contacts returned calls with polite, but cool, concern. Invitations stopped. Their social circle shrank as quickly as a tide receding. The legal wheels turned. He was investigated for theft. The police took statements. The lawyer filed civil claims. Neighbors who had been witnesses came forward. The necklace was traced. A pawn shop receipt, careless, hidden in a jacket pocket, sealed his fate. He tried to bargain. He begged. He blamed stress, debt, a moment of weakness. Nobody wanted to rescue him, not then, not after the recording. My revenge was not a shout. It was a long, cold silence that swallowed them. No scandalous violence, no illegal acts, just papers, truth, time, exposure, the things they feared most, shame, loss, the undoing of a polished image, were taken from them piece by piece. They left the house under the weight of formal notices and suspicious looks. Friends avoided their calls. Employers began to distance themselves. Children's playdates disappeared. The family that had thought themselves untouchable found themselves sitting in empty rooms, forced to face the wreckage they had created. When the music stopped that night, everything changed. The laughter never returned the same way. Their world narrowed, and in the quiet that followed, I sat in my living room, with the papers on my lap and the photo of my husband on the table. I had my house, I had my name, I had my dignity, but I also had to reckon with what revenge costs and what it heals. The house was quiet again, too quiet. No laughter bouncing off the walls, no footsteps upstairs, no clinking of glasses from parties I was never invited to. Just silence, and me. For the first time in years, I walked from room to room without fear of being told, "Stay out." I touched the walls I had painted with my husband, the window frames he had sanded with his own hands. This house breathed with memories again, not poison, not cruelty. Memories. At night, I sat by the fireplace with a cup of tea. The chair beside me was empty, but I felt my husband there. His photo sat on the mantel, smiling, steady. I whispered to him. I kept it safe. I didn't let them take what we built. My neighbors came by. Some brought pies. Others just sat with me, apologizing for not stepping in sooner. I told them not to apologize. Betrayal blinds even those who watch from the outside. What mattered now was that the truth had been seen. My grandson visited one afternoon. He sat on the old swing in the backyard. His little voice broke my heart when he said, "Grandma, I like being here. It feels safe." His words reminded me of what this fight had been for, not just for a roof, but for dignity, for love, for the right to exist as more than an afterthought. As for my son, I don't know what tomorrow holds for him. He hasn't called. His wife hasn't looked me in the eye since that night. Maybe they'll find their way back. Maybe they won't. But I've stopped begging for love that comes with conditions. A mother's heart can only be broken so many times before it learns the hardest truth. Some children grow, but not all grow kind. Still, I don't hate him. That surprises even me. Anger fueled me through the storm, but now it's quiet inside. The revenge gave me justice, but what I carry forward is peace. I've learned that forgiveness isn't about erasing the pain. It's about refusing to live chained to it. I may never forget the birthday gift that shattered me, the cruel necklace that exposed their lies. But I've also discovered something stronger, the power of standing tall when others try to push you down. And so, when I sit on the porch in the evenings, watching the Florida sky turn orange and pink, I smile, because I survived, because I reclaimed what was mine, because I proved that even a heart broken by betrayal can still beat with courage. If you're listening to my story, remember this. Family should lift you higher, not bury you deeper. Love should shelter, not wound. And when someone betrays your trust, don't let them write the final chapter. I wrote mine, with strength, with truth, with dignity, and I'll never let anyone take that from me again.